Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Swish City, where we're doing another episode ranking our power rankings, looking at each team 30 to 1. We've broken down numerous teams so far, looking at their additions, subtractions, and who they kept, and also looking at players that I think fit well in the team and players that I don't think fit well. If you missed the abundance of videos that have already came out, go check those ones out. But as you guys can tell from the thumbnail and from the title, today we're going to be discussing the Indiana Pacers. We're going to be breaking down why I think this team is coming in at the 21st or 21st team here ranked. So let's dive into that. So when looking at the Pacers, they went out and basically brought back the same exact team. The Pacers basically had no changes, and for a team that made the Eastern Conference Finals last year and still looking to make a push in this Eastern Conference with a young core, they're obviously primed to do so. Their only departure this offseason was Jalen Smith, who departed to the Chicago Bulls in free agency, and he was utilized as a backup big for this Pacers team. They went out and replaced him with James Wiseman, who agreed on a 2-year deal, which we'll get into a little bit later. But the Pacers also did a numerous amount of re-signings. They went out and brought back James Johnson, a veteran player who sits at the end of the bench. They went out and brought back TJ McConnell, who looked fantastic with Tyrese Halliburton out and is still one of the league's best backup point guards, even if he's getting older. They also had an agreement with Andrew Nemhard, a player who was being looked at by a numerous amount of teams, if not extended, after a nice playoff run this season, and also brought back Pascal Siakam and Obi Toppin on 4-year deals as well to bolster their front court. Pascal Siakam notably being their big trade acquisition that they went out and acquired last year, midway through the season. So obviously, when looking at this team, we can look at their cap situation courtesy of Spot Track, and we can see Tyrese, Pascal, Miles Turner, Obi Toppin, and Aris Smith rounding out the top of this roster, being their best 5 players, which makes sense. When you look down this roster, we obviously can know and can tell that this Pacers team is young and has a bunch of depth. Players like TJ McConnell, who's a little bit older, but younger players like Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker, Isaiah Jackson, Ben Shepard, even James Wiseman, who's still yet to crack the rotation, Andrew Nemhard, Johnny Furphy, their first round pick or their draft selection this year. All of these players are young enough players that are looking to seemingly fit in and find a role within this Indiana Pacers team. And I really like what Indiana's been cooking up recently. They have a core that is good enough to compete and still present themselves in the Eastern Conference. But maybe not a core that is, top tier in the Eastern Conference, but that's okay because, like I said, this team is still young and still has pieces to evaluate. With Tyrese Halliburton only getting better and being more experienced as a playmaker and point guard, you obviously can have these couple years to kind of figure out who's going to be your second and third star. As of right now, it's Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, Andrew Nemhard, but really finding out, is it going to be Andrew Nemhard? Is it going to be Benedict Mathurin? Who's going to be that other young guy to really step up and deliver for this team? I think is huge in finding out what direction that this Pacers team chooses to go to in its future. If this Pacers team feels very confident with the roster that they feel now, with the starting 5 that they have right now, they could look to go move some of their role players to get bigger roles, or maybe make a splash to increase their starting lineup. Or if they don't feel comfortable with some of these young players, they could use those players to go out and acquire a big star that is disgruntled or frustrated and bring him into Indiana to ultimately lift the Pacers to a top tier contender in the East. So now that we've broken down all of that, and now that we've discussed that, let's look at the players that I like, players that I necessarily don't think fit in with this Pacers team. And first off, we're going to be talking about my favorite Pacer on this team, and that's Benedict Mathurin. I got my Benedict Mathurin jersey in my closet, and I can't wait to wear it all season long as I am going to be supporting Benny the whole way. Now, Benny, in his last season game, looked very, very solid off the bench, had 20 points, was shooting very, very efficient from the field as well, from 3-point range, from field goal range. And this is the type of player that he's going to present himself. He needs the ball in his hands. He is a fluid scorer. He is one of the best players on this team. And unfortunately for the Pacers, his best role right now is coming off the bench, being that microwave guy because he needs the ball in his hands. In this starting lineup, having Tyrese Halliburton, be that playmaker, be that setter up, he's going to obviously find guys like Halliburton or find guys like Siakam and Turner down low in the post, but also be able to work with players like Aaron Nesmith and work with Andrew Nemhard because they work better off the ball. With Mathurin, it's a little bit harder to incorporate him into that starting lineup, and I think that's the place that we need to see him grow, is how does he look off the ball? If he can proceed to show that he can be one of these players that can work in the system without being the ball in his hands and can still be a phenomenal slasher, but also be able to hit that shot at a clip with him, not being the primary ball handler and not having to use catch and shoot and being more utilized as a catch and shoot guy, excuse me, I think that would be beneficial for this Pacers team and insert them even better into the starting lineup, having Mathurin being that starter. With Neesmith fitting in better as a catch and shoot player and also being a better defender into the system, it ultimately puts Mathurin off the bench. Now, Mathurin, I still believe, has that talent and has that upside to be a star level caliber player, maybe to be a second or third star on to be a third star basically on a championship team. And I think he could use that on this Pacers squad, and it's going to show this year. I think after this season, the Pacers are going to really realize that they need to lock in and kind of push in with these veterans, kind of push up in this Eastern Conference, regardless of the season that they have. So ultimately, with Mathurin, I think this is kind of the do or die season with him, where he proves it and inserts himself as a key piece for this Pacers future, or he inserts himself as a trade piece to go out and get that star to put the Pacers over the top in the East. But I'm really, really excited to see what Mathurin does. I think he's truly going to showcase himself this season. And regardless of the instance, if he ends up on another team and he has to be that star, or if it's on the Pacers, I think he's going to live up to it in the NBA. Now, this one might be a little bit confusing, but we're going to be talking about James Wiseman, ladies and gentlemen. And that's right. I really like this pickup of James Wiseman for the Indiana Pacers. Now, this Pacers team has, some depth issues at that center position. They obviously have Siakam, who plays the floor. He can slot in to play some five. They have Miles Turner at that five position as well. But with losing Jalen Smith here, the Pacers necessarily don't really have a true backup big. So bringing in a player in James Wiseman is going to help out that center room, and I'm really looking forward to see what he can translate. Obviously, in Golden State, he didn't look the greatest with them. He went over to Detroit, had some solid minutes in that backup role, and I think he can really live up to that here in Indiana as well. And I'm really enticing to see because he was a high draft pick. I still believe he has a ton of potential, and I'm not the type of person that a young player needs at least 2 to 3 situations to kind of determine if they're a bust or not. And James Wiseman obviously didn't look that great in Golden State, looked decent in Detroit. So I think this Indiana Pacers test is going to be a true value and a true sentiment to really picture for us NBA fans what Wiseman can present for us in this league. He's on a good team. He has a big enough role. So it's going to be showcased. It's going to be highlighted. And if a player in if a if a player in Wiseman does present himself to be valuable in this position, he can then, use this to earn himself a long term deal with the Pacers, playing backup big, or possibly earning himself a long term deal for another team to also bolster his uh, future career in the NBA. All in all, I'm excited to see what Wiseman can bring for this unit. Now, like most teams that we've broken down on this series, there's not a lot of people that I dislike in the NBA, and the Pacers, unfortunately, like those other teams, do not have somebody that I dislike. So when looking at the Pacers, I kind of look at their fit, kind of looking at this, and there's not really a player that I dislike, but there's one kind of question that's revolving around this Pacers team, and I think that's what I want to discuss, and I think that's what we need to kind of evaluate to see how well this team can get into the future. One of those questions was Benedict Mathurin. We already kind of broke that down. But another one would be looking at these players right here. Now, obviously, you see Russell Westbrook. Obviously, you see Pascal Siakam. But I want to talk about the two guys reaching in for the ball. Unfortunately, on Getty Images was the only picture with having these two players in it that would fit. But I want to discuss Jarris Walker and Obi Toppin because both of these players, I think, can be valuable for this Pacers team in ways. But it's ultimately going to be off of development who gets the more ample time. Now, in this front court for the Pacers, like I mentioned, they do have a little bit of a log jam here if we want to dive in and look at that as well. Like I said, they obviously have Jarris Walker. They have Isaiah Jackson as well, who I forget to mention as a backup power forward center alongside James Wiseman and Obi Toppin. So with having Isaiah Jackson, Obi Toppin, and Jarris Walker all kind of being that backup power forward, it kind of limits the Pacers here in giving them all ample opportunity. Now, Toppin has proven us to be the best player out of all of these three, but he's also had the most opportunity being drafted beforehand, getting some run with the Knicks, showcasing that his lob threat ability and dunking ability is perfect alongside a player in Tyler Halliburton who could work that on the bench unit. But when looking at players like Jarris Walker and Isaiah Jackson, they both have raw talent and they both have showed us that they can bring that skill for this Pacers team. Isaiah Jackson getting some minutes and run, providing to be a fantastic shot blocker and rim protector for this Pacers team, and Walker obviously providing on that offensive side of the ball coming over from Houston, having a lot of upside. Now, the Pacers haven't really been able to utilize Walker as much as they have, and that's raised a lot of concerns. Is Walker good enough to play in the NBA? Should the Pacers be looking to trade him or move off him because he has so much value as a young, enticing piece to get a key role player to kind of fit in to take them over the top? And the Pacers haven't really wanted to answer those questions. They've kind of been we want to evaluate Walker. We still believe in him. We still want to see what he can bring, but they're not giving him those minutes to prove it. And that's something I want to see because I also believe that Jarius Walker can be a top tier player in this league, and I do believe in him in being a quality player in the league. And we haven't been able to see that showcased, seen those skills showcased at all at a glance by any NBA team, and that's unfair for Jarius Walker. That's unfair for us as NBA fans, and he should be given that opportunity. So ultimately, I think the Pacers have a real question mark here. If Toppin's not really fitting in, or if Toppin gets injured and Isaiah Jackson or Walker steps up and really delivers, I think you realistically have to look to move off of Obi Toppin. But if Obi Toppin provides himself to be a key piece for this team's success like he has been the last couple of seasons, and you still haven't given enough time for Walker, ultimately I think that Walker will have to be moved for another piece. And even though he is intriguing, even though he is young, you have too much young talent already invested in that you need to move off of him if you want to compete. And I think the Pacers will have to bite the bullet. Maybe they'll trade a pick that they would have regretted, trading, but at least it would have helped them, in their quest for a championship and maybe even bringing a championship to Indiana, which would definitely change things for the city and for the culture for the Pacers. Now that we've broken all of that down, let's get into the record prediction and let's look where I place these teams. Like I said, the record predictions are a little bit wonky, but Pacers finishing at 53 and 29, 3 games ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks, and in fifth place in the Eastern Conference. I do have them winning the Central Division here. And ultimately, I think this Pacers fast style of play once again combated against the Bucks, who are a little bit older, a little bit slower, like a little bit slower paced of game with Giannis Antetokounmpo and setting him up. I think this Pacers team really outworks this Bucks team just in every category. And even though the Bucks are, know what to expect with this Pacers team, they're younger, they're faster, they're more quick, and they already gave the Boston Celtics issues. So if they can give a top team in the East issues, I think they'll give the Bucks some issues that are already dealing with some internal problems already, and I think they'll be able to pass them. But even though they are going to be that good, I still have them finishing fifth. I still think there are other top teams in the East that are going to beat them out. They're a little bit more popular with the Pacers. Don't be shocked if they are higher than five. But let me know what you think down below. What do you guys think? Do you guys like the Pacers? Where would you guys rank them? Do you have them at fifth in the East? I want to know all your guys' thoughts. But once again, you guys have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode here. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out.